Thank you. Welcome back from our short recess. We are welcoming now Dr. Meg Dussault. Dr. Dussault, welcome to Norwood. I would like to open this interview by asking the school committee members to please introduce themselves, and we'll start down this end.
Hi, Meg. Nice to see you again. I'm Teresa Stewart.
Good to see you, Meg. Kate Sibbing-Dunn.
Hi, I'm Joan Giblin.
David Hiltz, nice to see you again.
And I'm Anne Marie Mazzola. Welcome.
Thank you. Nice to see all of you again.
So our format today consists of 3 parts. We invite you to make a brief opening statement. After that, we have a series of prepared questions we will ask, and we will close by listening to any final comments that you wish to make. A copy of the questions have been placed in front of you, and we have scheduled 1 hour for this interview. We each have had the opportunity to review your application material. We would appreciate it if you could take 2 or 3 minutes to further introduce yourself to us.
Sure. And just because I'm aware that this is being filmed for people who are watching, is there a specific place that I am supposed to, or can I just speak to all of you? Okay. All right. Thank you. So my name is Meg Dussault, and I have had the pleasure of getting to know some people here in Norwood this past week and seeing your students, seeing your families, seeing your schools, and it was a real true delight. I have to share that with you. One of the things that I am really looking for in a next position for me is a sense of community and a place where what I value is belonging is also inherent in the community. It was obvious to me from the moment I stepped into the first elementary school that that is something that is here in Norwood, and that's a really enticing and exciting thing to see. Specifically, my background is kind of varied. I'm not a traditional candidate in that, I knew from the time I went into undergrad that this is what I wanted to do, and it continues to surprise me sometimes that I am here. I didn't necessarily think that this was going to be my career path, but the more that I learn about the needs that we have in education, the more I think that someone with my skill set might just be exactly what is needed. Because I am coming from a different kind of background and philosophy, if you will, and way of problem solving, I think that I am more equipped to deal with our modern education system, which seems to be breaking down in a lot of places, and whereas traditional methods are no longer seeming to be applicable, I think someone such as myself who kind of can think outside of the box and maybe comes from a different field or background seems to find more relevance. So I'm excited. I have to say, and I shared this with your faculty that, and some of your parents, that regardless of what ends up happening, this process has really imbued in me a sense of okay, we're in the right place, we're going in the right direction. The questions that I received from the people I've interacted with show that they too are really committed to students, and they're really looking at how can they contribute to the overall well-being of not only their students but the world, because that's where that's what we're doing, is preparing students to be citizens of the world. So, thank you.
Thanks, Meg. I have the first question, and it kind of, you've touched on it already. Specifically, why did you choose to go into education, and why do you want to be the next superintendent here in Norwood?
Yeah, so selfishly, I had said that I really didn't want to commute, so that is how Norwood originally kind of fell in my interest category. But the more I got to dig into Norwood and the more that I got to understand this community, the more I felt like it was a real nice match with a lot of the things that I value. So I grew up in a town adjacent, and I know southern New England and specifically southeast Massachusetts really well. I come from blue-collar family. We have a lot of military members in my background. I am the first person in my family to achieve a doctorate. My parents were the first people in our family to go to college. So I understand a lot of that American dream of let's do better by that next generation. And so being in a community that kind of values the same things that I was raised to value is really attractive. And I have found a lot of that here in Norwood. As far as why going into education, I think I personally have found that I have a passion for unlocking minds. I really just, there is no greater feeling than seeing a kid have that aha moment, seeing somebody go from, I don't know if I can, or I'm afraid, or this is hard, to, oh, I own this, this is mine, this is my knowledge, and I'm going to have this forever. It is incredibly satisfying, and more satisfying than some of the things that I've tried in the past. I've shared before, I was a performer. I think a lot of education is performance because it's about engagement strategies, and I think that's a place where I excel. But one of the things that I have found is there's, when you are a performer, you are doing somebody else's work, you're doing someone else's lines, you're performing someone else's vision. But when you are a teacher, you are giving, all the tools that you have at your disposal to somebody for them to unlock and own their own journey. And that's really attractive and exciting about education.
So my next question, this position will require a high level of communication with all stakeholders around initiatives that are new and in some cases that are perceived as challenging to certain members of our community. Can you please speak to us about your experience with both overall communication strategies and in particular around change management?
Yeah. So communication strategies, I firmly believe that you have got to communicate at all times. There is no communication strategy that, for me, includes like keeping things close to the vest, hiding things, not revealing. We're all in this together, and if we are a team, then we all should have the same information. One of the things that I find, I get frustrated even as an employee when I find out, for example, at the school committee table, oh, that's what we're doing? Wait a minute, I thought, okay, all right, I guess that's what we're doing. It's really hard for me to understand why you would keep your constituents out of any decision making, right? Because the point is we're doing this for them. That being said, I absolutely understand there is, elected representation and we can't hear from every single voice. So I get that, but at the same time, we need to constantly be letting people know what we're doing. There should be no secrets. One of the things when I first came into the central office in my district, there was no newsletter that went out. And so there was a lot of people who always were just like, well, what is going on? I don't understand this. And so I immediately created Dr. Dussault's Dispatch, and it went out every single week. It has continued, so now I'm in year 4 of doing the Dispatch. And we've gone through a lot of different versions of what that looks like. So when it came to be, it was during COVID, and so it was a tremendous amount of here's where we're at with COVID, here's what we're doing as a response, here's what you can expect. Now we're in a much more stable place. There's a lot, this past newsletter talked about Black History Month. It talked about our teachers are preparing for the solar eclipse on April 8th, and so please go get your, ISO glasses so that if you want to watch it, you have safe eyes. So it's a lot more community interest rather than just school interest. We have, I've partnered with all of the town offices. So like if the library has a program, so for example, it's February, so they're doing like a book lovers event for Valentine's Day, that's in our dispatch. When the fire department does touch a truck or something, fire safety week, that's in the dispatch. So that it really is a hub where the community can go as well. And I have found that really helps, not every single taxpayer has children in the system, and often they're wondering why, what is the reason that I'm paying these taxes in this town? And by directing them to the dispatch, helping them to see all of the things and seeing that they get something out of the schools, even if they don't have children in it, that has been really helpful and built some bridges in our community. As far as, challenges and change management, I just think of the organizational charts that talk about, change and I'm missing, I can't recall exactly all the little bubbles, but it's basically, it's a chain link fence. And if you are missing one of the pieces, then you don't have a connection and therefore your structure doesn't hold, right? So if you're missing out on communication, then your structure's not whole. If you're missing out on trust, if you're missing out on information, if you're missing out on your research, all of those things. And some of them are the responsibility of, the district person. Some of them are the responsibility of the community. But as soon as you do not have one of those links, then you don't have the possibility of a successful change. And that's something that I'm aware of and always try to make sure that when we do have to change, that we're not changing for change's sake, and that we are changing because we all believe it is going to benefit the majority of people, and we all understand it. And so that's where I'm at on that.
Yep. So I have the next question. How will you ensure the safety and well-being of all of the students and staff in the district?
Yeah, so I was looking at your district plan, which I believe is up at the end of this year, and I noticed that one of your initiatives was talking about safe schools and safe buildings. And so a question I had was, where are the places that you have been able to get to with that, and where are the gaps? So a lot of times I see that when we have a new crisis, for example, we may have a weather incident, right? So, I don't think that we have many of these, but let's just say there's a tornado. And so we've never practiced a tornado drill. Like, does the school have a basement? Do we have enough door jams for people? What is the protocol? And so one of the things that I have been trying to do with our district, and it's really about time, is doing kind of like scenario work, okay, so what's it going to look like if we do this? What is everybody's response to this? And then making sure that we capture it in writing and put it in all of our handbooks and update. It is happening more times than it should in every district, that one school has an incident, and so that school now knows exactly what is the right protocol and where are the places where we need to tweak the protocol. But then that information doesn't necessarily get shared out to all the other schools for them to then benefit off of that learning. So one of the things that I think is a priority in my book is that everybody goes through the same drills, that everybody has the same learning, that we have one common place and document. Does every single admin assistant have next to their phone what to do if you hear there is a threat of violence coming to your school? New research is saying that you want to keep, especially in light of the swatting calls, you want to keep the person on the phone as long as you can. Ask them a lot of questions, where are you calling from? What, you're saying that you're in the building, can you tell me which room you're in so I can get there really quickly to help you? And I don't think those are necessarily natural things that we would know to do. I think a lot of us would get that call and maybe be like, oh no, let me hang up immediately and call 911. But there's crucial things and information we might be able to get should we be able to keep somebody on the phone line. And so making sure that everybody is, all aware of the same best practices is going to help each building. And it's also going to ensure confidence in the staff that they know how to handle an emergency for their students. There's nothing worse than our teachers feeling like they can't keep our kids safe, that should something happen, that they are on their own. And so making sure that the district has prioritized this so that it can be communicated to our teachers and our faculty so that they can then do the best to take care of our children.
Thank you.
I have the next one.
Sure.
So if offered the job in 3 years, how would you define the success of your superintendency?
Well, it's twofold, right? I think that I have met the targets that have been assigned to me by the school committee, by the people who are part of the district who are saying, hey, here's what we want out of that next superintendent. I think that success for me would, if we were to do culture and climate surveys, that, over 80% of our respondents say they feel like they have a relationship with the central office and that they know their superintendent, that they feel like the schools know who they are and it's personal, and that they matter, and that we also have increased. Right now, we're Norwood, I think you were at about 30% or 33% of meeting your targets on like MCAS and accountability for state report cards. So increasing that number. I come from a district where we're at something like 80%. So like I'm not saying in 3 years we get to 80%, but maybe in 3 years we're at 50%. So looking at those academic benchmarks that really help to define success. I think also knowing that the community, when you go out in places, that people have pride in the schools. I definitely saw there was a lot of talk about elementary pride. It was kind of funny that everybody really wanted to talk about their elementary school, but I didn't hear a lot about like the high school or the middle school. And I wonder if that is, something that I just didn't get to see what that was, or is it that everybody is so proud of their elementary school and then they just go through the motions for the rest of the years? What does it mean to be Mustang in Norwood? What does it be, Mustang country or whatever you all call it? When you're at Norwood Day, like, is everybody excited to talk about what's going on at the high school as much as they're excited to say, oh, yay, I went to the Prescott. You did too? Okay. That was one of the schools I went to, so that's why I remember that name.
Okay, I have the next one. The roles and responsibilities of school committees and superintendents are sometimes clear and sometimes ambiguous. For example, budget approval versus budget implementation, personnel policy and finance versus personnel administration, or even dealing with parents and teachers with concerns or complaints. Can you describe some situations where these roles and responsibilities have challenged you and how you would work to address them if you were our superintendent?
So this is one of the biggest problems, I will say, that I've seen in central office, is that because especially with our current school committee, right? Our current school committee had run on a promise of we are here for you, community, and they make themselves available at all times for everybody. So what happens is a lot of our parents skip all of the steps. They do not talk to the teacher, they don't talk to the principal, they don't talk to anybody, they go right to the school committee member. And then the school committee member is in this really awkward position of trying to redirect them and say, well, actually, have you talked to your child's teacher yet? Have you started there? And the people getting frustrated, no, why do I have to talk to the teacher? You're the, so it's this really very nebulous, wonky place to live in. And I see it all the time, and it is an incredible challenge because it breaks down, it erodes all of the chains of command, it erodes morale because the teachers don't feel, I know our school committee is telling parents, go back to the teacher. If the parents don't, that's, right, you don't have control over that. But then the teachers, because they're hearing things from the school committee, start to think, well, don't they trust us? What's going on with there? And then because school committee can't en masse, because of open meeting laws, like talk to them or talk about it, right? It's this really wonky thing. So I think the superintendent is really key in managing that relationship. The superintendent and the school committee should be together in alignment of those values, but it should be the superintendent who is getting those things so that people aren't going to the school committee. They're going to that superintendent who can say with all authority and confidence, I know if you go back to my third grade teacher and you talk to them, you're going to get some answers that I can't provide you because that is your child's direct caregiver. And I want you to go there. And that people trust the superintendent to do that work. As far as, budget and policy, so every year, we have this really interesting debate about, can the school committee vote on the high school program of studies? Like, where is that line? If it's the same program of studies, are they just voting like we support you, or are you actually voting that document when we want to make changes in it? So we just watched this happen. There was a override conversation that happened that had been going on for years and years. Things were put in place, and then we got to the table, and all of a sudden people kind of read it in new light, and what everybody thought was just going to be a rubber stamp became a long conversation about it. And I think that part of the reason was because it's really hard to get all the players in one room without doing, noticing a meeting. But the other part is that there is still some unclarity about, whose role and responsibility is it? And it changes. So we've had, in my time in central office, there's been 5 school committee chairs, I think, because they've jumped around a lot. And based on what their background is, we've seen kind of slightly different ways of doing it. And so it is one of those things where, depending on which version of the committee you get, you may get a different answer about stuff, because I think sometimes the laws and the policies that actually govern it are subjective, depending on who interprets and reads. So I know there are times where people think, yes, we do not have to do this. We don't even have to go in front of the school committee for this. And then just as a courtesy, you do. And then the next thing you know, they're all talking about, wait, we are supposed to vote on this? We aren't. And, and so I think it's a lot of responsibility of the superintendent to be that bridge builder, to be that person who knows those things, to be an authority so that it's not so much guesswork. It's not so difficult to know where those lines are. Thanks.
So Megan, if you could talk to us about preparing a budget for the school committee, how do you go about this, and what happens before the proposal would reach the school committee? And then additionally, what would happen if the school committee has recommendations that are different from what are in your proposal?
So I've seen 2 different versions of how to build a budget, and I've worked on both. So I have seen, level service budgeting, and that was the majority of exposure that I've had. That was how we had done it for quite some time. It's how we're doing it right now. I was fortunate to also work with a superintendent who did zero-based budgeting. And so I saw what that looked like, and it was really eye-opening to see, oh, okay, what do we no longer need that we just always are rolling over? So it allowed us to have some really great conversations to do it that way. I think that it's really important. Budgeting in our district, it starts in October. So in October, we start saying to everybody, I know you just finally had your first full week of school, but it's time to start talking about what we're going to do next year, excuse me. And I think it's really important to get a wide constituent base of people who are talking about this. So we have from October till usually about the 1st of December, where principals and their staff are all talking about what they think the needs are. At the same time, we're having capital conversations about, what our capital needs are going to be. And so a lot of times those are going on simultaneously. We are just at the point now, so all of your building heads, department heads are bringing their stuff in December. From December through mid-January, you are kind of vetting, each of those things. Like, let's take superintendent and business manager or director of finance and, department heads, cost center managers. Let's take a look at what you've presented. Are we all in agreement about this? So that we have those conversations before we're getting to the place where we're really publicly sharing this information. Then when you think you've got kind of a good working idea, then you're bringing it to your school committee and you're explaining where you're at with everything. You should have, as a superintendent or a director of finance, you should have been kind of prepping all along. Hey, this year, let's not forget that priorities only gave us 2.4%. So we are going to have to be really making some difficult choices because we've got a 3% raise that we are, have already promised. So you keep reminding them along the way that the work is ongoing, that it's going to take several iterations to digest. Then usually in February, the end of January, beginning of February, we start doing all of our public meetings so now that the community can see as well where things are. We are very careful never to attach names to positions, but we know, for example, in our district, we need to increase our EL staffing. And there's a lot of speculate, like, is that because somebody left? Is it because things are not going, is somebody going away? And it's like, no, it's based on actual needs of students. But, even when we are transparent enough to say, yes, it is because we are doing a reduction in force or something, it's interesting to see that people just want to know, like, it's a concrete example of it. And then, you work with, as we do in our town, we call it the tri-board, but you're working with the priorities committee, the finance committee, and everything to just make sure that you're in alignment as well with what the town's needs are. A big thing often is, can we share any resources? Yes, maybe we don't have a librarian for every single school. Maybe the school the library needs to do some programming. Is it possible that that person can come in and supplement, and therefore we don't have to cut a so we have those types of conversations as well. And hopefully we are able, after several public forums with the town and the community, we're all able to come together to present something that everybody really can stand behind at town meeting and get approved.
Would you address the second part, Meg, of what you would do if you brought a proposal to the school committee and we had different recommendations than what were in your proposal?
Thank you. I thank you for prompting me for that.
Sure.
So this was my year as the acting superintendent. That was exactly what happened. We knew that we had a very large deficit that we had to cover, and I had made suggestions about how we could do that, and the community and the school committee were just like, absolutely not. We're never going to go that way. And there were multiple meetings where I just kept saying, I don't understand. If we don't make a cut, what are we going to do? The only thing I can think of is that we're then going to have to go to FinCom and ask for more funds. We're going to ask for them to pull out of reserves. And I personally don't want to do that. And so then we really got into, a real heated, what's the right thing? And we spent time laboring over it, because either way, it takes from somebody, if you're taking from reserves, you're taking from, a lot of areas that may need that. You're also pulling out of, reserves in a lot of cases are built off of a certain population. And so you're taking out of that. If you're making cuts in places that may be somebody's one reason for coming to school. And so it's a really tricky thing. And I can't say, in the end, what we ended up doing is we kept offering incentives for retirement, and we were able eventually to hit a magic number where enough people had left, and we were able to negotiate incoming people and set a cap and say, listen, I know maybe you do want that master's 9 teacher, but we are never looking at anybody over a master's 2, because we really have to do, and so it required all of our building managers to look harder, and to maybe have to do a lot more coaching to train up a staff member. In the end, we did not make those cuts, and we also didn't take from the reserves. We squeaked by barely with just doing this kind of stuff, but we did it together because we really weren't able to. Neither of us wanted to do either of those things, so we had to find a new way, and we did.
So the main point of a school system is education. So can you tell us how you would work to achieve high academic outcomes and to increase test scores, which are the state's barometer of academic outcomes?
So we're really fortunate in Sharon that this is, always been the value of the community. Our kids come primed to learn, and often parents, in spite of anything we do, so we have great math programs, and we still know there are families who are sending their children to 3 different math outside programs because they have the resources and they value it. That is not realistic in every single situation, and nor do I personally believe it is necessary. I think what has to happen, though, is that we have to keep talking to our parents about that school is a priority. I think that our parents, a lot of them don't necessarily understand what it means to have time at the end of the day to, sit down and do your homework and have that homework looked over with, a caregiver. I think, and I'm a parent, so I understand this, but I think we just keep pushing activities, and then, you've got a kiddo who's been up since 6 a.m. and not eating dinner till 8, starting homework so those are not best practices. So that's something that I think we can do on the home front. I think that we have, and at least the people that I met, it seemed like we had incredibly qualified teachers here, and they were so dedicated, and it just, some of the work that I saw on the walls was telling me that our teachers are capable of doing the work. And so I think really helping them feel empowered so that they go that extra little bit, they go that extra mile, that they, and I was a teacher for a while. I know there are days where you're just like, I'm tired, I can't do this. All right, I'm giving a worksheet. And that is not a slam on a teacher. It's just reality that not every day is easy. And the more that we also are struggling to get our students even just regulated to sit in the classroom, the more our teachers don't even have time to do teaching. They're doing so much of behavior management. So I think really making sure that we are supporting our educators, reminding them that they are brilliant and that they are, phenomenal educators, helping them with the resources that we do have so that their job is not to be, always the disciplinarian or the behavioral, the BCBA, but their job is the educator to prioritize that so that they, we can put it back into balance. I think also will help boost test scores and morale because now your teachers are doing the work that they're trained to do. And I think you increase test scores also by lowering anxiety for kids. I think there's a lot of performance anxiety with these tests. And so, not constantly messaging, and I'm not saying that this is what's happening, but in general, not messaging, we're teaching to the test, or you've got a big test, or hey, test. The more that we can leverage that, we are working for understanding, we are working for knowledge. And one of the things I know I say in my house all the time, and my children think I'm lame when I say it, but I'm always just like, isn't it fun to find out what you know? Every time they have a test. And I'm just like, no, actually, Mom, it's not. And I'm like, yes, it is, because even if you got it wrong, then you got it wrong and what you have to do, And I get that that's Pollyanna, but at the same time, it is real and it's a strategy. And I think we sometimes don't even take the time to just talk about general strategies for how to deal with anxiety so that kids can do better, on their tests and they can perform better.
I have the next one, and you've touched a little bit on this, but if you want to find another example, can you give some examples of how, in your previous roles, you have worked with staff, parents, students, and municipal partners to build support for the public schools?
Yeah, I think I'm thinking about our building. So our high school building is brand new. We're in our second year, and there were a lot of contentious meetings, town meetings about building it, and it looked pretty likely that it would not pass to get funding for it because there were so many people who at the time were, empty nesters. It was at that really tricky housing time where a lot of people, the value on their homes wasn't exactly what they thought it would be. Like we had just come out of that great time where everything was skyrocketing and it seemed like, oh, I'm going to be able to sell my house for, double what it's worth. And then all of a sudden it just flipped like on a dime. And so that's kind of when we started talking about this and people were just like, I cannot afford it. I know you need it, but I can't afford it. And there was a dedicated group of parents that were pounding the doors at every single event and just begging people to come in and see the condition of the school. So our school, we had, the foundation had been broken in a bunch of different places and there was like ivy and things that would be growing up inside of it. And we actually had to shut down several classrooms every spring because we would have an infestation of termites. Like it was not palatable. And so, one of the things that we talked about, and I was part of this group, is like, well, people don't know that. It sounds like an exaggeration. It sounds like, sure, there's termites in your classroom. Sure there is. We had this is cute and also difficult, is like we had a duck every single year that would come into our courtyard, lay her eggs, and now you have this big problem because she would lay it in the courtyard that was enclosed, and the lake is visible. She can get there, but the babies can't fly. And so every single year we would have the Make Way for Ducklings walk, which is adorable. It's so sweet to see little baby ducklings walking through the high school. And at the same time, it is really problematic. It disrupts school for the entire week that this is happening, as everybody's waiting to see, oh, what are they doing? You get locked out. You go out there to go see the ducks. You're locked. It just was not. It just wasn't a great environment. And so bringing those things to people's attention so that they can see really has helped, and it turned the tide. We'd spent time coaching some of the speakers that we had elected, not elected formally, but to say, you know what, you're going to go. You're a really passionate speaker. You're one of our teachers, and we're going to coach everybody on. We're going to practice this. What is it going to be like to speak at town meeting, so that we can give some factual information, but it's passionate, and we did get the money to do it, and I think it was a lot of that effort. As a reward, because of that, and this we stole directly from Norwood, is that, and I think I said this in one of my meetings, we stole your Norwood Day. We didn't have anything like that in Sharon. We just recently had our 250 anniversary, I think about 5 years ago. So there's this big celebration and everything. But then, here we're going to have this new school, and how are people going to get to celebrate that? Where are they going to get to be a part of it? So all those taxpayers who really consented to this thing, are they going to get to have it? So myself and the rec director, and completely just the two of us, we invented Sharon Day. And we modeled it. It's not modeled exactly after Norwood, because you guys are way cooler than we ever could be. And you must have better insurance, because we can't get some of the things that you guys can get. But we just were like, let's do something to celebrate, everybody, and let's make it this great day that everybody can come and be a part of the town and the schools and the town offices. We do free tours of the school, so everybody gets to see it. The school, we contribute through our community education program, a lot of the kid programming, the library partners with us, and it just has been this wonderful collaboration to really celebrate the things that make us a community. And we just did our third year of that, and it's been really successful. It gets bigger each year, and that's a direct, yes, again, stolen from Norwood. Thank you very much, Norwood. But that is 100%. If you go and you look, it's just myself and the rec director saying we want to give to the town, and this was the gift that we gave.
I am next. What have you done in your experience to try to make your special education department work better? How have you looked at ways to contain costs, and how have you balanced the needs of students with the fiscal responsibility of the school department?
So one of the things just about balancing costs is that we were sending a lot of, all of our special education staff had to get trained in annual, compliance training and restraint training, and we were paying outrageous amounts of money to send them all, and so one of the things that we did was just, we could do this in-house, and so I became a trainer. So I became CPI certified as a trainer, and then I ended up training all of our staff for several years to cut down on costs, because now the only cost was just the book versus the money to go take the course somewhere else. It was really important to me to be the person who got to be the trainer, because at the time that we started that, I was the director of community education, which runs all of the before school and after school and summer programs. And what would happen is we would have 150 kids in our building, in our care, and everybody else was gone because it was the end of their workday. So no nurses, no special education teachers, no regular teachers, no principal. And so it was really important to me to make sure that I had the training and the knowledge, and that I really partnered with our special education staff to understand the needs of our children that were going to be in our care. It was really interesting. I also learned a lot about, different types of behaviors and, kids who maybe had a one-on-one during the school day and could not really succeed without that one-on-one were thriving in the after-school environment because, their issue was about specific classrooms anxiety or, a true learning disability rather than, a cognitive disability or anything. And so we were able to then start talking, myself and the special education director, about, well, what lessons are we learning in the after-school environment that we can maybe bring into the day school environment so that some of these students can maybe have more breaks, have more reward incentives. Again, we've been through quite a few special education directors as well in my time, and each of them has had a different philosophy about, what is the best programs. And, we've tried inclusion, we've tried sub-separate, we try push-in. We currently have a lot of our special education programs are in one building. That was an initiative. We thought then we're sharing all of the resources, in one building. We found that is problematic because now you have put a bunch of resources at one building, and so people think of it as that's the special education building. It also is really just not good for the community because you have kids at another building who maybe have not gotten an opportunity to know some of their different peers, and so you're missing out on an opportunity to teach just kind of some great overall lessons about we all may be inhabiting different bodies, but we're the same people if you're removed some of the population. So there's a lot of places where working with our special education team, I've learned quite a bit. I think the other thing is that, special education is a massive driver in the budget. And I think Norwood, like Sharon, more and more we're finding students get outplaced, which drains transportation. It's we're allocating more and more funding to special education than some of our general ed stuff to keep up with what's going on. So we've been spending a lot of time thinking about, what can we keep in-house? Do we build a new sub-separate program to keep people in? And all right, if we did that, what is the cost of staff and benefits? And is that ultimately cheaper than, the transportation to send them out to another place? But I think it's going to be an ongoing conversation, and one that I don't know we're going to have a resolution anytime soon, because I think the more that children are growing up, post-pandemic and all of these things, right? We're seeing new things that we didn't even know how to address before. We have kids that are coming to us and it's like, wow, no single tool that we know is working. So what else do we do, so it's an interesting one to keep pondering. I think it's something that a lot of attention needs to be paid because it's not going to, I think someone had shared with me in the staff meeting, I think you guys are at about 25%. I have a feeling that number is not going to be going down dramatically in the next, 3-5 years. I think, hopefully it'll stabilize, but I don't think that we're in a position quite yet as all the factors that contribute, haven't necessarily all fell into place either.
Sorry. Can you describe your management style with your direct reports? How will you build and maintain a central administrative team? And how have you promoted professional growth among your administrators?
So my management style is unique because it's about relationships first. And I need to know people. I want people to know me and I want to know them. So when I first went up to central office as the acting superintendent, a lot of those people I had known in my prior roles. I'm just like, oh, there's the payroll person, so I knew that, but I didn't really necessarily know them. And so day one, we just had what I called retreat day, and we all sat around, and I fired questions, like I was, all right, everybody tell me, like, let's go, what's your favorite color, what's your whatever, by the end of that day, like, I had got, and it sounds so silly, but like, I had people dancing. I'm like, all right, I am now going to play a song, and we're all going to do our best dance. But, like, people by the end had warmed up enough to take those risks and to play. And that one day of kind of team building reaped dividends, because right after that, we had crisis after crisis after crisis after crisis. And things would get hard, and people would be, like banging their head on their desk, or like, I don't want to be here. And I'm like, I know you don't, but remember that, you like the color green, and it's always, I can bring you some, like, I would find those wins. Or, something would be incredibly difficult, and I would put over our loudspeaker the song that we all danced to, and everybody would just have a moment of being silly, and it would break the tension. And the other part is my management style is I'm never asking anybody to do something that I can't do myself. So that year, we lost our business person, we lost our HR person. Our assistant superintendent at the time was on her way out. I had never been in central office before, and so I needed to learn very quickly, and I needed to rely on my staff to teach me, but also I needed to show them that they could trust me, that I was going to learn, and I was going to take that burden from them, and then I was going to do those jobs. So there are a lot of, I am known in my district as just like the person you call if something's not working well. I fit in wherever it is, and that's, I think, because of my management style. It is completely, like, I think truly that people know, if the custodian, all of the custodians left tomorrow, well, we could call Meg, she'll fill in, and she'll be able to do that. If it was, one of the nurses, all right, well, let's, which happened, like I'm obviously can't give medication, but I could certainly sit there. I knew how to open Snap. I knew how to record that someone came in. I knew how to triage and get things going there. So my management style is, we have to remember that we're all people, and our work is hard. Our work is long. Our work is heartbreaking in a lot of ways, and it's frustrating, and it's, we are public servants, and anybody who's serving the public, you get met with a lot of things that we didn't have before, because the world has changed. And so the more that, I can let my staff know that I always have their back, I'm always there for them, and that it is okay to remember that life is fun. The more I find that people enjoy working with me. Now, granted, there are definitely people, I'm thinking of one employee who's just like, there is no way I will ever dance. I don't even want to be a part of this. And, I have an amazing relationship with that person. And like, whenever something goofy is going to come up, I always give that. I'm like, hey, listen, like, I would love for you to participate, but I know it's not your thing. So I just want to let you know you can opt out or whatever. And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And anytime they don't, then I'll write them some, note and leave it on their door, or, do something that's their own version of silly or playful to just let them know I see them. So yeah, that's.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So maybe we want to talk about implementing strategies,
Mhm.
and if you could share with us the strategies that you have used to ensure that district strategic plans and policies are carried out on all levels.
Yeah, so again, that's a communication thing. It's, first of all, you need to, before you even get to communication, you need to make sure that you have them in places where everybody can access them. I am constantly amazed at how many of our staff don't even know, like, for example, that, there are policies that govern the work that we do, and that they are, policies throughout the whole entire state of Massachusetts. So you can, reference a policy by its call letters. And, that policy is also going to be the same pretty much for any other school district in the Commonwealth. And a lot of times I will bump up against staff members who have no idea that that's how this works. So I think communicating that like it is part of your responsibility as a school employee to understand how the school works and where can you go to get that information, and that it is not a secret test that you fail and we're going to shame you because you didn't know it, but like I want you to have this information, I want you to have the knowledge. Making sure that when you are hired that you are given your contract, that you are given the policy book that governs the schools, that you're given a safety manual, that you're given a crisis prevention manual, so that, like that work is happening and ongoing. When there's an update to it, it is communicated district-wide. So a lot of the policy work is, making it visible because it is there behind the scenes. And it's a lot of the work that we do here in, this room. But I think it's really important for our staff to understand that as well, because then it makes it a lot easier to implement if they understand why we're implementing it and how it relates to their work. As far as district plans and strategic plans, again, getting as much stakeholder buy-in, I think it should be mandatory that all teachers somehow have seen the district plan, sign off on it, that they've read it. But even better is that they contributed to making it. One of the things that happens a lot is because it's a time commitment that people elect representatives, and say, okay, like it's time for a new strategic plan. Who's going to be on our team to go up there and represent? And I think a better way of doing that is for the team that is putting it together to go into the schools and to take, principal hours or staff time and say, no, we want to hear from everybody. And, we have so many ways now, QR codes or things where like you can capture people's information, even if it's a millisecond of something, so that they can say, oh yeah, I did talk about that. I know what that is. And so that they can communicate that as well. I think that's one of the biggest things, is that a lot of that type of work is invisible to our staff, and it makes it so much harder for them to really get why we do the things we do up at this level.
Thank you very much. I think, given the time, we probably have time for maybe one, maybe two follow-ups. Does anybody have anything they'd like to follow up on? No? Okay, that's great. Okay, so I just saw Teresa flipping, so I wanted to make sure I didn't run on. Okay. Okay, so in that case, if you could, please take the next few minutes to make any closing statements, and if you wish, you can ask us questions as well.
Sure. Well, I guess the question first is, what do you really want? I think one of the things I've seen in a lot of different searches is that people give you their best version of themselves, and you're like, yes, I like that person. But then, do you really know what that person stands for? And is that a match with what you are looking for? I think it's a real disservice if, for example, you are someone like myself, who I think is a real relationship and communication specialist, right? If that is truly not what you're looking for, if you're really looking for is someone who is exceptional budgeting and has done, comes from corporate finance or something, then I may disappoint you in some ways. And so I would love to know what it is that you are really looking for from your next superintendent, if you know.
I will take this. So I know, throughout this process, we had created a document and shared it with the screening committee and had really went through sort of funneling what we're looking for. I think, and this I'm not speaking for the board, but just my assessment from where we sit in conversations and committees that I've been a part of, I think that I think it's twofold. I think there's a lot of trauma and hangover from COVID, and I think we're seeing that not obviously through the students, but also teacher burnout, administrator burnout. So I think that there's a large piece of that is here. And, you know, without any judgment to current administration anywhere in this district, I think the past 5 to 7 years, and I think that's being generous, it's probably more like 3 to 5, Nord has undergone a tremendous amount of change. I think that change is, as you know, and you have sort of talked about, I see it in the district that I work in, I'm sure you see it where you do, like, trends are real, and I think that is across the Commonwealth that is happening. I think there are districts, because of their makeup, because of the way the towns are, that maybe are feeling that more, and I think that we are in a place where the skills, roles, and needs of the superintendent position has changed. And we are looking to put someone in a role that understands the issues, has some experience in dealing with them, and is ready to move the district into the next phase of its existence.
Does anyone else want to comment? I can comment as well. Or, all right, okay, you were leading up the, oh, I'm sorry, Joe, did you want to? All right.
I was just gonna say, we're looking for somebody who the town and everybody in our town will trust to lead our schools and do what's best. I think we're a unique town. We're a purple town. We have a lot of people who are very progressive. We have a lot of people who identify as very conservative. You can see, Trump 2024, when's the next election? You can see Trump signs right next door to, hate has no home here signs. And those neighbors will be on good relationships with each other, because the thing that unites us is the people in this town love Norwood. And so it doesn't matter who you're voting for in the presidential election, our town wants to do what's right by Norwood. And I think one of the things that we need is a superintendent that people can trust is going to do the right thing for Norwood, regardless of anything else, anything else that's going on. And to do that, you have to be, to some extent, a unicorn. You have to be able to talk the budget. You have to be able to know where to cut. You have to be able to know where to push. You have to be able to speak to our finance commission and convince them that you're doing the best thing for our kids in the most efficient and operationally efficient way possible. You have to protect our staff. You have to protect our students. You have to make sure all of our parents feel like their kids are safe. Right. The kids whose parents are the parents of the kids who are dysregulated, along with the parents of the kids who are not as dysregulated but are being impacted by those dysregulated kids. So we're looking for somebody that the town can trust to lead. I'm looking for somebody that the town can trust to lead our education system, because we have a great town that's really focused on doing what's right for Norwood.
Thank you.
It's pretty succinct.
And just to bring in from the screening process, I echo what my colleagues have said, but we also are in the middle of several big projects. We have the middle school going up, we have an elementary study going on, so we really need somebody who can hit the ground running, and that's all. Don't need to say anything else more about that.
It's a good progression, because I agree. And also, because of all the initiatives that we have going on, somebody who can help us navigate the structures and the systems, in addition to the communication and the relationships.
I would echo all.
Great. Well, I will just say to all of you, I don't think I come in a traditional package of what most people think of when they think of a superintendent. And I think that's a blessing and a curse. I think that there are people who are going to, should I be your person, or even just watching this, who are going to say, really? Okay, I'm not 100% sure, because they don't know me. I don't necessarily have the same polish that some candidates who are much more coming from this background and have just been, this is their bread and butter all the time. I think that one of the things that I am really, and I've spoken about this, is that I occupy many spaces. And so to hear about, having somebody who can hit the ground running on a lot of different projects, I attend our OPM meetings every single week for our building. I helped write the building study and contributed to that. And there's, I'm still with it. And there are lots of work that's gone on where I have pushed and said, no, we need this and you can't back off on this. And so while I'm doing that, I am also at the same time, you know, running clubs for students and, you know, making sure that I'm helping support faculty who maybe are in talking about a grievance. And, you know, I've been our Title IX officer, our civil rights officer. I'm currently doing records requests, you know, like a lot of the things I have been a part of. So there's not a lot that I haven't seen in my time. And so I think, you know, like that expression, negative or positive, you know, what is jack of all trades, master of none, right? Like I think that I bring a lot of skills to the table. But if what you want is that person who will always look shiny and, you know, new and, you know, you'll never see them sweat kind of thing, you know, you're going to see me sweat. I'm human. But that's, I think, a good thing and that's why I think this community especially excites me because I think, you know, I've only met humans and I've only met people who are, you know, really interested and invested in, you know, not just Norwood, but like in making sure that the next generation of Norwood really has their best chance. So it's been truly a pleasure to go through this process with all of you and to meet all of you. And I know that whatever next steps, you know, that you're going to have somebody who I think really, you know, just through your vetting process is going to be there to do that work for you. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of our candidate interviews today. Unless we have anything else before we go, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Yep,
I'll second it, but then can I also ask a question?
absolutely.
I know that's weird to do, the motion to adjourn. Would you just clarify for us in the community the next step?
Oh, yes, of course.
Sure. So the next steps are that folks can watch these interviews. They'll be available on Monday. NCM has to export them, and we will post a link to a survey. We'll post an announcement about that so that people, a reminder. We've already let them know it will be up Monday as part of the timeline, but we'll do a reminder, and along with that reminder, we'll share a link where people who have watched the interviews or came to the community event or were part of the school visits can link to that survey and give us their feedback. We did update that survey so that you can fill it out for more than, initially it was you could only fill it out for one candidate, and we updated it so you could give feedback on more than one candidate. So you can now fill it out more than once if you want to. And then Wednesday, we will meet for a business meeting and deliberate the choices.
And then some of us are finishing our reference checks, and we will get the survey results Tuesday night
Yeah,
for
I
us
think,
to
yeah, I
review?
think it's gonna close Tuesday, and yeah, so we'll get the survey information to us on Tuesday. It's not a quick it's a quick turnaround, but there's a reason for being efficient with the process too, because I don't know if some people are probably paying more attention, but there's a lot of movement in superintendencies right now, and you kind of need to be aware of how much you space things out. So if anybody has the perception that this is rushed, we feel like we've given each phase a good timing, but there's part of a reason for that is that so you don't lose potential quality candidates to other offers, et cetera. So that's why our goal is to have a motion for an offer this on the 7th.
And on Wednesday, when we discuss that, we should be prepared to discuss the strengths of each candidate, and we'll round table, correct? Yeah,
So typically, Anne Marie will conduct the discussion, and we'll go over each candidate based on their strengths, and then and then it kind of proceeds to talk about who choices would be, and then that would then lead to a call for a motion.
Okay.
That's how that's meant to go.
Okay. And then, just in terms of timeline, sorry, I am process and timeline. So once we make that motion, we choose who we want to hire pending negotiations, successful negotiations. Anne Marie, you would need to make a phone call. And then I know the way our agenda is drafted on Wednesday, like this is the end of our business meeting, but then we do have to go into executive session for union negotiations. So it's a little bit of a different format than I've seen some other school committees conduct, how they go about this, like a lot of times as a standalone meeting. But then 2 items, just so all of you are aware, you should have received already from me some of the information we requested from our finance director around the position, and we will be getting from our council on Wednesday some of her suggestions, because once we decide who we want to hire, then we have to figure out as a school committee when we're setting up executive sessions with that person. So I just want to make sure that's on our radar of more meetings that we're going to have to figure out.
Yeah, the motion should be to go, to offer the position and go into contract negotiations. It should mention that, yeah.
Okay.
Anything else?
Nope.
So I apologize for jumping the gun on the, asking for the motion to adjourn. So we have a motion on the table by David, seconded by Teresa to adjourn. Do I have to poll for this independent? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you Wednesday, February 7th at 7 p.m.